Hello. Today I decided to return to a ship that, well, I started off by saying I thought it was much better than people thought it was, and now it seems like a lot of people who were talking down on the Kurfürst have basically turned around and realized that yes, this is actually a very strong ship, which is of course always nice to see. The issue of course with the Kurfürst turning out to be as strong as I predicted it to be is the issue that the Montana has largely become irrelevant or even completely useless. Because, well, the strengths of the Montana at the moment, basically the only strength, in the past it was slightly better at brawling, or well, because of the maneuver, turret traverse and such, but even then it was arguable if it was actually better than the Yamato at brawling. It was only better if you managed to come in at an angle where you could actually get broadside on the Yamato. If Yamato had any sort of chance to angle against you, then it didn't matter how good you were at brawling or how good your turret traverse is, the Yamato was going to win that fight because he'd just citadel you straight through the nose and blast you out of the water. And, well, so the brawling aspect has kind of fallen away because the Kurfürst is much better at any sort of brawling because he can go straight up against any battleship, even torpedo battleships, because of Hydro. Like, he can go straight up and brawl at turrets and have Hydro to warn him plenty in advance of the incoming torps. And he's got the turtleback armor, which will protect him against any sort of citadels, which is especially important when you brawl against Yamatos. Against the Yamato, if you're in Montana, you try to turn and basically bring all 12 of your guns to bear. The Yamato is just going to basically 6 citadel you and instantly delete you. Whereas in the Kurfürst, you could easily do this. You'll eat like a 20-30k volley, because he'll hit you right in the middle of the ship, but you'll be able to return the same damage, if not even more, if you manage to get a citadel volley. So the Kurfürst is simply far better at brawling. And pushing into caps, that was once again, I don't really know if the Montana ever really had an advantage in that. I mean, the Yamato was better at tanking, but the Montana on the other hand was more maneuverable, better thanks to the guns being able to shift, and basically you had an easier time kind of pushing into caps with the Montana, as long as you weren't of course facing an enemy Yamato who could punish you heavily. But once again, that's something the Kurfürst is now better at. Now in this case I chose this commentary because I just realized our S6 is AFK and I'm probably about to be struck by the tile, since I'm not surprisingly the foremost battleship down south. So I mean, the Kurfürst AA is weak compared to the Montana AA, but even then, if you manage to get the optimal situation like this, I predict the incoming strike, so I turn away, I focus fire the squads, and basically I force him to spend the longest possible duration in my AA to be able to strike me. You see, he basically have to come around and strike me from the side, which means spending a lot of time in my AA. And even though you have such a weak torpedo belt and you're a large ship and all this, simply the fact that you have so much HP means that eating a couple of torps and eating some bombs isn't really the end of the world, because, well, sure, you'll take some damage, but with the 105k HP, it's not a big deal. The Montana would have probably survived the strike by shooting down all the planes, but ultimately it's still not a big deal. I mean, trading off everything the Kurfürst has just to be able to shoot down a few more planes is simply not worth it. I mean, sure, you lack the maneuverability, but once again you have the Hydro and you have the turtleback, and you have everything in advantage over the Montana. And I've really been trying to play the Montana lately. Like, I've really been trying to make the ship work. I've tried multiple different ways of making it work, and it just feels so pitiful. I mean, it feels like a shade of its former self, because it has simply been pushed back even further. All these German cruisers aren't exactly helping matters either, because, well, you can't really citadel punish them, and when it comes to tanking their damage, you're not nearly as good as the Yamato is at it, thanks to the differences in armor. I mean, sure, you deal with them. I mean, you're still kind of a T10, but you're by far the weakest T10 battleship right now. If CVs were significantly more prevalent, then maybe the Montana would be like still competitive. I think that it would actually need an even further AA buff, so that it would basically be immune to CVs to really actually have an advantage. Because right now, if T10 CV wants to strike your Montana, he can still do it regardless of how much AA you're packing. He'll just strike straight through that. So you're trading off all these things that make a battleship strong to be able to counter this one element, but you can't even fully counter it, it's only partially. So ultimately, not really worth it, is it? Now, the one thing that always made, when people defended, when I always thought the Montana was too weak compared to the Yamato, or well, the Yamato was too strong, basically. But people always said, well, the Montana is really, really good at killing cruisers, like that's somehow special for a battleship. But people made this argument. But I mean, the Kurfürst is even better at killing cruisers because the shells are even larger. So you do it, basically your volleys are even more destructive. Like, oh, but you can instantly delete cruisers in the Montana. Yeah, and you can do the same thing with like extreme ease in the Kurfürst. I mean, let's say as soon as this guy has to give broadside because he can't keep pushing towards me because I'm gonna pin him eventually. And as soon as I give broadside, I'll bloop, instantly deleted. And that's exactly the same thing you can do in the Yamato and you can do in the Montana. Of course, the Montana is slightly better than the Yamato, but the Kurfürst is even better than both of them at that. So, really? I mean, what exactly is the role left for the Montana right now? I've been trying really hard to find some sort of special role that would make the Montana useful, but I just can't find it. I mean, bloop, that's another cruiser gone. That's not something Montana specific anymore. The Kurfürst can do the same, but he also has the turtleback, and he also has more HP, better frontal armor, the hydroacoustic search. Like, the Kurfürst is a ship I actually consider competitive against the Yamato, because thanks to the turtleback, if you actually manage to close the distance to a Yamato and you get into brawling fights, then you have a clear-cut advantage. Whereas at long range, the Yamato has a clear-cut advantage, but there comes this time when the boards flip and the advantage shifts in your favor. The Montana never really has that against any of these. I mean, there's no point where the advantage flips in your favor. I mean, sure, if you manage to get full broadside on some idiotic Yamato who gives you full broadside, but I mean, every single battleship in the game can exploit that situation. I've 4 or 5 Citadel Yamato in my turrets. That's not something you can say as battleship specific, or I mean ship specific. That's something every single battleship can take advantage from. So right now it seems like really the only thing the Montana has going for it is maybe the speed. I don't know if it retains more speed than, well, I almost instantly deleted that Daga as well. He was left with like 1k HP. I mean, what's the role of the Montana? I found myself playing it less and less. If I wanted to play the god tier battleship, then I play Yamato. If I want to play something else for fun, then I play the Kurfürst. And when I play the Montana, I just get frustrated because I see my shells bouncing where I know with other battleships they wouldn't be bouncing. I know I can't really push in. I can't be the bully that these ships are. By the way, if you shoot at not at the bow, but at the frontal turrets of the turrets, you can citadel it even from the front. A lot of turrets think they're unkillable if they show full, basically angle perfectly against you, but not the Kurfürst, as this guy just learned. But here, I mean, well, 5 minutes ago I had 15k damage, now I have what, 150k? Like, this is such a strong ship, such a potent ship. As usual, I'm not aiming for his bow, I'm aiming above it, and that's why I'm landing these 10k volleys per double turret, or well, 20k volleys in total, basically. And thanks to my Hydro, once again, I see his torps a mile away, there's no risk of those ever hitting me. I just angle away and there's nothing he can do. The carrier is once again going for me, but I have so much HP. I'm so tanky, I'm such a beast of a battleship. And this is kind of what I'm missing. This kind of feeling of actually being this beastly T10. This kind of feeling I'm missing from the Montana right now. It doesn't feel like this beastly battleship. It just feels like a weak imitation. It feels like they took an Iowa and they slapped another turret on it. And then they were like, well, it's kind of like a T10, maybe. The sad truth is the Montana has always been behind the Yamato. Far behind it. But now with the introduction of the German battleships, it just shows how large of a gap there is between them. Because even the Kurfürst struggles to match up to the Yamato, but it completely obliterates the Montana. It's not even close. So that really gives you an idea of how massive that gap is. It looks like this game is already going to end, and what, I have 185k damage? I mean, showing broadside like this in Montana would be just Citadel City and I'd get deleted. But in this ship, no issues whatsoever. And I feel like the Montana is just in a... I'm tempted to say almost unplayable. It's simply very unrewarding and unfun. 196k damage in the end. So I mean... And I still shot down 32 T9 planes. And this is one of the AA is one of the weaknesses. CVS is one of the weaknesses of this ship. I mean, why would anyone ever play Montana right now? There's just no point to it.